Hey guys, it's Mark with Needlejig again. And I just had an incredible conversation with the world famous Kari Barba. Let's talk tattoo. Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm really excited. I am speaking with a woman who I've greatly admired since the beginning of my career and had the pleasure of meeting early on in my career in the early 90s at Inkslinger's Ball. And here is the one and only world famous Kari Barba. How you
Oh
doing this
gosh,
morning, Kari?
I'm good. That sounds crazy.
Well,
Wait a minute.
I do remember seeing your photos in magazines and back when I was getting inspired to get into the craft, and you along with many of my other mentors, and then eventually found myself in a position to just ignorantly walk up and start introducing myself to people as if they cared, and it worked out well for me in the long run.
That's the
But
best thing to do, I think. That's the way to go about it. You've got
yeah,
to meet people somehow and they're not going to come up to you. So you just got to go for it. That's
yeah,
absolutely right. Yeah.
I've been lucky enough never I'm almost never intimidated or starstruck or anything with any other human being. I just somehow feel I've mentally felt like I've been on an equal plane with them, and I can just walk up and start talking to people, even if I'm totally out of place doing so. But
No, you should, because I mean, first of all, we are all on an equal plane, right?
well, I
And the
would
thing
like to think
is,
so.
well, I think so. And even in is let's just talk in tattoo business, it's tattooing and we're all just doing what we like to do and trying to do our best at it. And it doesn't matter if somebody has a you feel like somebody has a better skill level than you just don't.
Yeah, no,
There we go.
I feel the same. I mean, I try not to look at other people with more skills with envious eyes. I look at them with admiration and
Mhm.
try and think on how I can improve or get my skills closer to that level or past that level or equal to or something along those lines. But you've always been creative. I remember one of the things I really remember about you was you put a ton of effort into decorating your booths. You
Oh
used to
yeah.
go absolutely overboard to win, like, best booth and just put on a great show. It was always awesome. One of the things I looked forward to all the time was in fact, the one mental image I have of you is in a pirate themed costume at Inkslingers back in the day. And that's, if
Yeah.
anybody says Kari Barba, and that's instantly right in the forefront of my brain. So yeah, you always put a lot of effort into everything you do.
That was a great one that we did used to do that with the booth. We're like, okay, what can we do this time? And that year we happened to have this guy working for us at the time. His name was Dominic, and he was super creative, like with sets. So he went to the store and he got some canvas, and he got a big thick rope, and we had a ship's wheel, and we made it look like a pirate ship as best we could. It was really great, and that was a super good one. I love that one too. We even have a I don't even know how we did some of what we did, but even at Halloween, we managed to bring in all the hay bales and decorate the booth as best we can. And I don't know if we'd be allowed to do that anymore because of the extreme health regulations now. Some of the things we did back then, we probably couldn't do now, but it was super fun. Always enjoyed that. We used to do the same thing with our shops. Each shop had a theme.
Yes.
Every one of them was done differently. So, when I first opened the first shop in Anaheim there, and I was in 83, when we walked in there, it used to be a jewelry store. So we were trying to figure out how could we pump it up, and we decided to was on Beach Boulevard, so we went with a beach theme, and kind of decorated, painted the walls, airbrushed all over the walls. We even put in people always joke about this, but we had a kids section so that kids could come in and play in there, a bunch of toys and little drawing table and stuff like you might see at a doctor's office or a hair salon, something like that. But we had an industrial shop, we had a sideshow circus shop. Now the one down in the Pike, we went kind of naval theme. It's not overboard naval theme, but just enough so you get the idea that there used to be a Navy port there.
Yeah, big shipyard, really. So,
Yeah.
now, I'm trying to think here, Kari Barba history. You didn't have any formal art training, right? You were just kind of like a naturally gifted, well, you probably spent a countless hours drawing as a child, not naturally gifted, let's say, but you don't have any formal education and training, or at least your early years, right?
Correct. Yeah, the most I've done is, your high school art classes. I did take one summer art class at a community college once, just to see what it would be like. But no, I never went into any training. I started tattooing so young. I started tattooing at 19, and I was raising my son at the time. Jeremiah was, born when I was 18. So I was already a mom. So I didn't really have the time or the finances to think about, hey, I'm going to go to college and get a degree. I was already working and, struggling to keep that together. So that never fell into place, but just on my own at night, trying to do what I could and practice. And like you said, you look at other people's things and you kind of learn and try to better yourself. And back then it was a lot of books, so we'd go through the books, study art from different people that way, run to every bookstore in town and pick up what we could, and that helped a lot with reference and ideas.
Yeah, I remember back when tattoo magazines were really popular, and just yeah, running to the bookstore, just what day they were going to get delivered, and you had to get right there and see what was going to be there, because we didn't have this. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Google. We didn't have anything. And
no.
Yeah.
I used to have
so
many books. I had so many books. I mean, we had a full library, and then each shop we'd open, we'd stock it, full library each shop. And then eventually nobody started touching those books, so we started donating those out to local charities or senior homes, whoever would take them, that sort of thing. And now I'm down to about one row, mostly tattoo related books, and that's about it.
I was going to say most of the books that I have left are just strictly tattoo related, but I think if you go back to the 90s, you went to almost any tattoo shop in almost identical libraries in each one. The random coloring books, clip art books, larger art reference books, but it was almost like you could almost buy a set, and it was duplicated in every shop. And then you'd be in another shop and you'd be like, oh, I don't have that one. And
I
you
don't have that
write
one.
it down and have to go shopping for it. But
where do I find that one?
It's a totally different world now, where everybody just, shows you their phone and says, this is what I want. And I'm like, I don't know if I don't tattoo daily at all anymore. I barely tattoo, but I don't know how well I would fit into that. I mean, I love the internet. I love art. I love all that, but there's something about that that's like kind of like a cold disconnect. What do you think?
It's true, and I had to go through a transition because I was very old school. I drew everything out and colored it in advance way back in the day and had everything ready to go. And then styles started to change and people got better, and the reference that you had access to got so much better. And in my business, people started asking me more and more for realism, black and gray. So my transition happened, and then I'm working more from, reference right in front of me. I still put up my music stand, right? And I put photos up there and I kind of look back and forth and go from them. And it helps my mind kind of flow in a certain direction. But I don't personally, like you'll see on Instagram a lot, or on Facebook or whatever, you'll see people pre-plan the whole piece out. And my mind doesn't work like that. My mind works better when the arm is there, or the body, or the back, and I can see the shape, of what I'm going to work on, or the flow. And then I'm like, okay, I need to create this piece here because your muscle works that way, and everybody's body's so different. And as I'm tattooing, I can start to see it just happens more. If I draw it on paper, it doesn't I'm just copying that. But I
Right.
like to be in the moment and feel what I'm doing and create it as I go. I prefer that.
Yeah, I stopped doing finished sketches, or I should say finished drawings for tattoos, because once you show somebody a finished drawing, that's exactly what they expect. And I like to keep that creative freedom, like you were just talking about,
Yeah.
all the way through the tattoo. So it got to the point where I would just give people a pretty rough sketch, say this is where we're headed, but that wouldn't lock me in any direction, because then I could, once it hit the skin, and work with the curves, the muscle tones, whatever you got to do. And I guess it was either A, lazy, I didn't want to finish the drawing, but B, mostly just maintaining that creative freedom all the way through to the end of the tattoo. And there was no rebuttal at the end saying, oh, I love it, but it doesn't look like the picture, like
Yeah.
that. I used to
Right.
hate having that discussion in the end. So
Yeah, me too. I 100% agree with you. I love that freedom to just, sometimes you're in the middle of the tattoo and you just get this inspiration to do something different, and your hand just starts moving in a different way that it hasn't before, and it just happens. And you just, whoa, this feels great. I'm going to go this way. And I love to be able to do that. I really like it a lot.
yeah,
Especially like I do a lot of octopus now, I love free flowing designs like that, where just at the moment I can decide I'm going to go somewhere else,
Mhm. I
and
was noticing that. I
hopefully
was
you're,
going through some of your more current art here, and I was like, wow, where was this reference? I got one of the guys that works for me a couple years ago. We started a full down with the ship type of a theme with a
oh yeah.
giant octopus coming up taking down his ship, and I was like, man, I wish I had that reference back then, because I was like,
Yeah, so I just pull up random pictures of octopus, and like I said, I put them on a music stand, all in front of me, and just pull out my Sharpies and, start figuring the shape on the skin roughly, and then just tattoo. I just love to, so maybe the head is going to be, a couple bumps in a circle where the eye is going to go, and just a rough shape, and then I just fill it in, you
mhm.
know,
You can
by
see it. Nobody else
looking.
has to.
Yeah, they ask me. Some clients are like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this." I've had one client once. I did that kind of a sketch on them. I think it was for a dragon years ago, and they're like, "I can't do it. If I can't see it finished, I can't get it." And I said, "Well, I'm just definitely not the artist for you then. Because I don't work that way, and I don't feel comfortable working that way."
Mhm.
So I sent them on to one of my crew, where they laid it out exactly and made it exactly like that for them.
Yeah, I
But I
mean,
prefer the freedom.
I mean, a lot of people forget that we are customer service industry.
Yes.
So, I mean, give the customer what they want. If you can't give them what they want, you recommend and pass them on to somebody that can. But a lot of people can't get past their own egos to allow that to happen. They just get
Yeah,
insulted when they don't get that perfect match out of the gate. So,
that's
I,
true. But I've learned over the years it's better just let go,
mhm,
let go and there's a lot of things that I'm not good at, and somebody else is going to do a much better job at that piece than I am. And I can realize what I'm comfortable with and what I can do. So I just will refer them. And if there isn't anybody in my studio who can do it, then I'm like, okay, you really need to contact this person, whoever that may be. It might take you a while to get in, but this is absolutely who you need to do this piece.
right.
It helps a lot. I think for the client, they feel more confident. Seems like they come back later for the next piece.
Well, they
You
appreciate the
referred me for
honesty.
this, but I want to find this. Yeah.
Mhm. And the other side to that coin too is, though, when you do that, when you essentially kick somebody out of your chair, it frees up the chair for somebody you probably could work better with. And too many people are afraid to give that up, so they'll work
Yeah.
outside their comfort zone, or at least in the earlier years. Once you get like older, like me, you get a little
Like
crankier, and
me.
well, now you still look young, so yeah,
Well, I'm not so young,
you're only a couple years older than me, maybe. So,
I'm going to be 62 this year, and I feel like
wow.
I've earned every one of those. So I'm happy about that. Yeah.
I will say this, whereas the aches and pains as they come are not as enjoyable.
True.
I honestly want to say I'm in my best years. My mind is clearer than it's ever been, and I have more energy just on a different level than physical energy. But I'm probably in the best place I've ever been mentally.
Uh,
So it's like life gets better, but the body doesn't.
right. That's right. That's when you embrace your foam roller. Right. For me, it's like the finding the exercise or stretches or yoga or workout or whatever works for you, and keeping the body in check as much as you can to allow this time that you've put in over your life to be used, right? Because yeah, you have so many more ideas and your thoughts are more clear, and you have a better direction of where you want to be and what you want to do. And yeah, it's good.
You have all those experiences to rely on, and just you can assess situations a little bit better, and everything's better
Yeah.
realistically. So where I used to dread aging, I really like it now. It's just it's the end part that's the kicker. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, we don't want to talk about that. No.
yeah. So these days you're obviously just doing mostly large scale work and predominantly black and gray, or are you still throwing in some color here and there? What are you
Predominantly
generally?
black and Yeah, predominantly black and gray right now. I just chose after we got back from the pandemic, just to focus more on that personally right now for two reasons. First of all, I can get more people through. There's a lot of makeup to be done, and I can get more people done if I'm doing black and gray. So I kind of filter through that. But there's certain pieces that I take that I think, okay, I would really love to do that in color. I'm going to go ahead and do it. I've taken on a few, especially when it comes to octopus or kraken. Sometimes doing those in color for me, I do a lot of those. Sometimes I could be doing octopus or kraken 3 times a week, so I enjoy it a lot. And I feel like throwing a little color in here and there on those or certain pieces. I've done, I think it was like succulents and hummingbirds, real large scale hummingbirds, and I did them color for her. I thought that was really fun too. A little bit here and there, but
Yeah.
definitely large scale.
Now the octopus and the kraken are cool because you really can't draw them wrong. They can take on any shape, twist in any direction.
Yep.
They can expose any color, so you can't screw it up, right? I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
long as
you
the
can do
lines
whatever you
flow,
want.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
flow it wherever you want it to, and I don't have to do you know, uh, let's say the whole octopus, for instance. I don't have to show all 8 tentacles. I can do a portion of a head and one tentacle on an upper arm, and
Mhm.
you know what that is. You don't have to see the entire thing, and it renders well and it fits good on the body, and people are great with that. It's very rare that I ever do all 8 tentacles. I've only had a few people make requests that to be able to clearly see 8 tentacles.
Now, is this a subject matter you migrated towards, or is this something that was just popular just due to your proximity to the ocean, or how did you come about like doing so many?
I think what happened was I did a couple back backaways. I did one big large piece, chest to arm, first octopus, and then another guy came, and got another one on his, 3/4 back kind of deal. And then I was working on a leg, like a full leg octopus. And right at the time I was working on that leg, that's when the exhibition at the Natural History Museum LA came out, and they approached me and they said, "What would you want to tattoo? If you could tattoo the silicone arm, what would you put on it?" And I just spouted out and I said, "An octopus, of course. It would be perfect." And then they said, "Oh, that would be perfect for us too, because after all, we're the Natural History Museum." So I did the octopus. And once that exhibition was up and that leg was finished, I just started getting call after call after call. And that was probably, I think it was 5 years ago. And I've been steadily doing them ever since.
Yeah.
Just I'll probably get 2-3 emails a week on, can I get this octopus? And some of them are too small, or they want it completely realistic, whereas I prefer with this particular subject matter to especially do it my way, and just let it happen. And if they want me to copy the picture, then I don't really want to do that, so.
Do you feel pigeonholed in this now, or are you still enjoying
No.
it quite a bit?
I love it. Yeah, I love it. So I still get that kid excitement when I get the email. Oh yeah, they want an octopus. I love it. It's so free to me to do them. It just kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but those pieces where you just feel like it flows out, right? Just
Well,
feels
you can
natural.
push them any direction you want to too. So
Yeah, it's great.
You can
Love
conform it to any sort of body type or body part, or you can
Absolutely.
make it work. That is cool. So what was your first introduction to tattooing? I mean, you're a Midwest girl, right?
Yeah, Minnesota.
Wow,
Minnesota.
Minnesota. I love Minneapolis. Unfortunately, I've only been up there in January and it's brutal, but I still love it. I love the people.
Yeah. It's a beautiful area for sure. And my first introduction was up in Minneapolis. I didn't actually see a tattoo until I was 17 years old. And I saw a friend's boyfriend had the 4 aces on the forearm there. And it was traditional style, but it was bad traditional style. I always joke about that because my first experience with tattoo was not good, because I was like, ooh, that doesn't look very good. It doesn't look very good. And I had never seen any. It's kind of weird that I made 17 years without seeing a piece, but once I did, I thought that's intriguing, but why can't it look better than that? I didn't understand why it couldn't look better. Then, fast forward about a year or so, we ended up moving into a home in duplex in Minneapolis there. And our downstairs neighbor happens to be a tattoo artist who works for Dave Yurku there in Minneapolis.
Nice.
Yeah. So Neil Grant worked for Dave for several years, and we became friends. And he's the one who actually said to me, Kari, I think you should try this. I think you'd really be good at it. I think you would enjoy it. And, I thought it was cool for him, but at the time I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I wasn't sure, I didn't know anything about it. So he finally talked me into trying that. And I had such fun doing the first tattoo. It was a little scary, you're kind of like shaking and like, don't watch me, don't watch me do it kind of thing. But when I was done, I was like, wow, I really like that. That was really fun. It was the same as my sketching that I was doing, but just a different canvas, as they call it now. But I was, putting it on the skin, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So that was my first introduction, and it all just grew from there. I just started doing more and more tattoos on people that I knew. Luckily Neil was around because accessibility was very easy. He was
your tattoo Google.
Yeah, exactly. And he was very sharing, he was like, oh yeah, if you want to do this, this is where you get. He wasn't like the closed wall of like, oh, you haven't earned it. He was willing to share. So thanks to him, that's how I ended up getting into tattooing.
Now, did you end up working up there, working for Dave or anything? Or
well, in a sense, I cleaned the shop, but no, he actually, Neil took me to Dave's house right after we did the tattoo, and we walked in on his family barbecue, and it was kind of like, hey, Dave, look what Kari did. And of course, Dave was upset, right? He was like, what the, he wouldn't say a word, but the next day he called me up and he told me about a guy in California who was looking for an apprentice or someone to hire. And it was Cliff Raven. He said, Cliff Raven's trying to hire somebody. And I was like, Cliff Raven, there's no way I can go work with Cliff Raven. First of all, it's all the way in California, at this point I'm 19. I've never even been out of the state, right? So I'm like, little bit nervous about that, but we ended up having the dream then, right? I had the dream of, oh, maybe I could do this for a living. And that dream started to manifest in my head and grow, and we got laid off our jobs in Minnesota. So it was like, California, let's go, let's go. And maybe it'll happen, maybe we could do it. But,
I didn't realize
we
that was
real
the start. That's pretty amazing. I mean, Dave Yerkew recommends Cliff Raven. That's
yeah,
that's history right there. That's awesome.
it was
Now,
fantastic.
now,
Yeah,
how did you feel when you first hit California, being a nice Midwestern girl? I mean, that was that culture shock or what?
a little bit of culture shock. But that said, the place where we ended up was not like LA, right? We ended up in Lancaster, which is, for people who don't know, it's, way out in the middle of nowhere in the desert, and it's very quiet. And I was like, this is California. Where's the palm trees? I want palm trees. I want the beach, So I didn't have a good first image of California until I headed to the beach for a day, looked there, went down to San Diego, that kind of thing, looked around. And then I was like, okay, this is beautiful. I love it, right? I fell in love with it. But it took me a while to migrate to that type of area, So, ended up just trying to make it at first, just trying to pay the bills. California is pretty expensive compared to Minnesota, and rent's like, I mean, we had a second, third floor house there for a couple $100s a month, and we moved here, and you end up with a small little 1 bedroom for at least double, right? So it was like, ooh, it was a smack in the face.
I think it's even worse now, but
Oh yeah, way
so
worse. Yeah.
now your early years in California, piece that together for us, like the first place or two that you worked at, and for what time frames.
Yeah, so the first place that I worked was at Fat George's Tattoo in La Puente. And I ended up working there with Fat George for a while, and then with Fat Mike in San Bernardino. And both of those shops were really hard traditional shops. They weren't like, oh, let's put the nice furniture out front and that sort of thing. And I learned a lot working in those shops, especially from Fat George. Fat George was, the kind of guy who told me, like, hey, you're doing great, but you need to kick it back and learn some clean lines, some, traditional. And he started having me do some of the traditional stuff that walked in, which I had never done. I was doing all realism, black and gray and color realism at the time, trying to get as many colors in as I could and slam it down. But so I worked at those two shops just weekends, because I was still, one then the other, but I was still working my regular job. I was working at, working at a foundry, and I worked at a bookstore, and a book assembly, like a book bindery, things like that. I had factory jobs, right? I was still doing that. In the meantime, though, I was out visiting shops, and getting to know people, and ended up in Tattoo Land, where I met and got to talk a lot with Mike Brown. And Mike Brown and I would have a conversation, and I'm like, where do you buy these designs? Like, where do you guys get these? I was aware of Spaulding and Rogers, but these designs they had at Tattoo Land were different, right? They looked, and he goes, well, we draw most of them. Most of them is myself and Jack and Freddie Nugretti, who were drawing most of the flash that was on the wall. He said, but there's a guy, Ed Nolte, and he's looking for people to draw designs. And I said, oh, he goes, you can call him up, maybe he'll let you draw some designs for him. So I called him up, and I said, hey, do you guys buy tattoo designs? And he said, well, send me a couple samples, so I drew out a sheet and I mailed it off and got to do my first set of flash. So my first years were actually spent more so doing flash. Before I even tattooed in a shop, I was drawing the flash. And I did those 28 sheets for Ed, and then I did 300 some sheets for Spaulding Rogers right after that. And then ended up at a convention in 1982 on the Queen Mary. And that was my first convention I tattooed at. I hadn't been in any other shops yet, except for those 2 shops on weekends. I'd only been tattooing at those shops about 3 months. And I'm like, oh, I want to go tattoo at this convention. That would be fun. And so I showed up, and this part really kind of floored me, because I was walking around the convention just starstruck, just like, wow, look at this, oh, there's so-and-so, there's so-and-so. And I turned the corner, and Spaulding Rogers booth was there, and they had this huge banner, how everybody puts that thing up in the back of the booth, right? And it said, "New flash by World Famous Kari Barba." And I was like, oh my God, no, what did he do? And I was instantly like embarrassed and shy, and kind of like, oh my God, why did he put World Famous on there?
Some big
But
boots to fill.
yeah, so
Well, you did it eventually.
well, yeah, with a little help from my friends, I always say. But the thing is that little statement, everybody came over and got tattooed. So I was slam packed busy. So that was the kickoff of my career, was probably the flash designs.
That is awesome. I still Spaulding Rogers isn't that far from us here, maybe an hour just over the mountain. So I go by occasionally and see Bill and Jeff, and yeah, they're good guys, man. The grandsons.
Nice,
So,
nice.
Yeah, good people.
Yeah, back in the Huck day, when Huck would call me and he'd say, "Kari, I need some biker designs. Kari, I need some reapers. Kari, I need some this." People would call him up and ask for specific things, and he'd call me and say, "Do me a sheet of this, do me a sheet of that." So it was all per request of Huck. And then one day he said, "Okay, do whatever you want today." And that's when you'll see things like dinosaurs or tigers or whatever weird stuff I wanted to draw at the time.
Everybody
But
loves dinosaurs.
yeah, I had never seen them on Flash, so I'm like, I'm gonna put some dinosaurs on there. Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, so then so we're up to tattoo land, and then where do we go from there as far as next steps?
Yeah, where do we go? So I did that convention in 82. Worked at the shop in San Bernardino, weekends still for a while, still doing weekends. And then I was like, I wonder how it would be to have our own shop, little young, I think. Now, when I think back, it was definitely jumping the gun a bit, should have stayed there a while. But we talked to Mike about it, Fat Mike, and we said, hey, we're thinking about this. How do you feel about it? What's your thoughts? And he said, well, I'm totally down with it, Kari. If it's just you want to do it respectfully. So respectfully is, you go way out of town, right? So the minimum distance at that time that we felt was 25, 30 miles, right? So we went all the way as far as we could think, and we started looking around at the map and populations in city, and landed on Anaheim, California, and ended up opening that shop in 83, April 1st, 1983. So tomorrow is our anniversary.
Wow, congratulations.
Oh, tomorrow we're going to be 39. That's
Wow.
right. Yeah, geez. So that was, in 83. So anyway, ended up opening that shop with a huge amount of fear and Mike's support, which was great, because you don't want to burn any bridges. You want to be kind to those who helped you along the way if you can, So do it the right way, right? So we're way far away from him, hour and a half drive or something. And there was only one little shop in Anaheim, so we weren't sure. So we talked to him first, we said, hey, how would you feel about this? Is this disrespectful to you? We're thinking about doing this. And he's like, oh, it's just me here. I'm just a little operation. You go ahead and do what you want. So we opened that up on Beach and Ball. And that was the first of, several shops. I've had 7 different shops over the years, and down to now where I just run 2. It's where I'm hanging in there now, just with the 2. But we had that shop in Anaheim for 26 years. And at 26 years, the neighborhood, started falling. So we ended up closing that shop down. And now I'm in Long Beach, where I'm at now, at the old Pike shop, old Bert Grimm's old shop.
That's a story in itself right there. Now that's the oldest shop in the States, right? Or one of the
It's
oldest
the
shops.
oldest shop in the nation, oldest shop
Okay.
in all of Americas, and the second oldest in the whole world. So there's one shop that has, I believe, 6 years on this shop, and they almost closed last year. And during the pandemic, they almost closed, and I'm so glad they didn't, because yeah, I'd hate to see that happen. That would be really sad. But yeah, so we're at the old Pike in California, which is kind of like used to be like a Coney Island of California. A lot of people don't know what the Pike was, but it was a tourist destination, rides and amusement things and stuff like that. And at one time there was 12 tattoo shops in that little area of the Pike, and overwhelmed by doing tattoos. Bert Grimm alone owned 5 of those shops. So he created his own competition, and he would be like, oh yeah, go down the street. I don't care,
Mhm.
because he knew it was going in his pocket anyway, right?
Brilliant businessman.
Yeah. It was a port area, so when the war came, the World War II, the Pike was already going, it was already existing since the late 1800s. We have photos in the shop where you see little goats pulling a buggy, and they're pulling up to the Pike area right there. It's on the beach, and people would come and visit from all over the place. It became huge. And the naval port that was there, that fed the tattoo shops. They started opening everywhere because they'd come into for leave and they'd run straight to the tattoo shops. I'll get tattooed. And so, Bert ran that shop, but he didn't get it until 1954. So he missed that era, but carried on a new era, and kind of popularized that particular shop that still remains there today.
That's awesome.
It became a tattoo shop in 1927, and it's been running ever since.
That's just incredible. Now you know a lot about tattoo history. You spend a lot of time studying that, and um, you probably know more about early female tattooers. Uh, I didn't spend a lot of time studying early female tattooers. It's a male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
Now, given you came in with some pretty good credentials and recommendations, so you were probably better received. But how was it in the beginning without a lot of other women tattooers? Was that difficult for you?
You've heard a little bit of my story. So
Mhm.
for me, no, it wasn't very difficult. It wasn't difficult until I was in it more, right? Then I started to feel it, because then you have other tattoo artists who weren't welcoming, clients who didn't want to get tattooed by women. You started to hear more, so and so said this, so and so said that. You hear that back talk, right? But for other women, after talking to them and hearing their stories, it was extremely difficult for them. And the course of history, that's just the way it was coming up. The change that happened to equalizing everything and trying to have people see that everybody's on an equal plane, and this isn't sports, right? It isn't football where women are playing in a male football league and the athletic thing is different, or there's a controversy. Art is art,
Right.
so there isn't anything to discuss at all,
Well,
right?
it's gotten
So,
a lot better, but I mean, I know I'm going to miss some here, but like when I started, okay, there's you, Patty Kelly, Vivian, and a handful of others, uh,
right.
and just countless men. But I was well aware of it, but it seems to have gotten a lot better since I started tattooing in 92. And there's been an explosion of women, and I'll say the last 5 to 8 years, where there's just some incredibly talented females out there now. And I'm truly impressed with what I see on a daily basis. But you also have people coming into the business now with art degrees or multiple art degrees, where back when I started, or when you started, we did it because either A, there was major attraction there, or B, I personally didn't fit anywhere else in the world. So this is where I landed, but
Yeah.
with no major art training or anything like that. So seeing that evolution is just mind boggling to me, but it's good to see so many women nowadays. I, but you have to have a totally different perspective, obviously, that I
Yeah,
can't
it's
quite.
interesting because by the time you started, you're saying in the 90s. So yeah, there was a lot of women who had already started. So the 80s, that's where I think the explosion started. You know, it started in the 80s. So when I started tattooing in 79, that particular year was the year that Vivine Lazanga opened her own shop, to be the first woman to own her own shop, right? Why hadn't that happened before? Anyway, that's huge, right?
Right.
There was, like you said, a handful of women tattooing at the time when I came in, but so Julie Beasley at the time, and Judy Parker, they started the year before I did. They started in 78, and there's a handful. Pat Sinatra, I think, started right around there.
I'm feeling
Right, and a
guilty for
few
not
others.
mentioning these women already, because they're all women I know.
Yeah, it's hard to remember. When you're on call, you forget all the names, right? They
Yeah.
just go out the door. But, you know, prior to that, dating back, you know, you go back, and I've done a couple talks on this, but, you know, we didn't have a lot of women tattooing. You maybe knew about one or two at a time in the course of history, right? You know, the first modern day tattoo artist who was a woman that they recognize now. And what they mean by modern day is like somebody's doing it this way, not in a tribal or traditional way, you know, in their native way, right? So they say modern tattoo artists. But if you look way back, women were actually in tribal atmospheres or in native areas the ones who did the tattooing for the village in most senses, right? So that we just don't hear about that. But that's the way it used to be. They were the tattoo artists for the town or the village or whatever. So you fast forward, yeah, you come all the way up till the 70s, you start getting a few of us. There was less than I could count on my hands that I knew of at the time. And then in the 80s, it's just like it starts doing this, you know, and then by now, like you say, we have these incredible women. I mean, sometimes I'm like, holy crap, how are they doing that? You know, and that's with men too. You know, I'm not just talking about the women, but the talent level now is like out the roof. I just think like, how do they do that? And, you know, I used to sit down in the chair, and I was, you know, young, and I'd sit down and I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. You know, I can make that. Oh, I can. Oh yeah, sure. A portrait. I can do a portrait. Oh yeah, I can do that. Now I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. You know, that's, you start to realize that the artistic level of these people, and they study so much to be able to put that on the skin the way that they do. And you know, I started out, I think I mentioned really quick that I was doing some color realism. My second or third tattoo was a little piece about that big, and it was a bluebird sitting on a branch, you know, with the tree in the background and all this stuff, did it with a single needle, all in color. And I was on my sister, and I joke about it because now it looks like I took some chalk and went, you know. So I'm like, okay, that wasn't the best idea. And over time, you know, you realize tattoos change and morph with the body, and that's going to happen, you know. But I look forward to see how this detail and this skill and this is in all genres, you know, how are things going to hold up? Are these new colors going to hold up longer? Are they going to stay truer and brighter, you know, than the ones from before? Or, you know, what's going to happen? You know, where's that going to go? But these women, yeah, they're killing it, you know, and there's a lot of them. Yeah, a lot of
we
women.
we have the luxury of seeing tattoos we did 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's all a learning experience that no matter how hard you try and explain it to the younger people in the business, they're just going to have to learn it for themselves, you know, because if you don't
Yeah.
plan accordingly, it, it's not going to look as good, but it could end up looking horrible. So it
Yes.
it's
Yes.
forethought.
Yeah. And I still struggle with that. You know, I tell my clients, you know, they just comes up yesterday. I was talking to a gentleman and, you know, I just finished a sleeve on him and he wants to do another sleeve. And, you know, he wants, you know, faces, you know, he wants the full man standing there with his face and this expression. And I'm like, he will reference other work he sees. And I'm trying to explain to him that you will know that's a man, but you won't be able to recognize what the expression is, or, you know, what the eyes are going to look like. They're going to spread over time. And, you know, we have one artist in our shop who documents that. So they'll take a picture and then, you know, 5, 10 later, they'll take another picture and put them side by side and show the change to try and help their clients understand. And I think that's so smart. I wish I would have done that over time.
Well, we can't do everything.
No.
So,
Yeah, so I've had a few apprentices over my lifetime. You know, early in my career, I apprenticed a gentleman by the name of Paul Black, and he's now out in North Carolina. And, you know, since then, a couple others. I like to mention my current business partner because when she came into my shop, she wasn't tattooing, she wasn't artistic. Her name is Yvonne, and I apprenticed her back in the 90s. And now moving forward, she's now my current business partner. We've been working together all this time. It's been 30 some years. And then I, you know, tried a couple more, and I was like, I was really disappointed in people, right? And nobody would follow through. Nobody would continue or had respect. And so I said, I'm not training anybody. I'm not doing it. And then Jenny walked into our shop, and she was our shop help for a while. Then she went off and got a degree. She went off and got an art degree, and then she came back to shop help and had a dream of wanting to be a tattoo artist. And I was like, I don't want to do it, you know? And Yvonne, my business partner, was, I don't know, we should maybe think about it with Jenny. Maybe we could do it together, you know? So the two of us decided to apprentice her together. And I mention that because Yvonne, who is my other apprentice, has become so technically perfect that I don't know where it came from. It's from within her, you know. She does these lines that are so crisp, it looked like they came out of the printer. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just amazing. Anyway, so
yeah, I hate those
I said,
people.
yeah, yeah. So I said, okay, you teach her that stuff and I'll teach her this stuff, right? So we taught her together, and Jenny has developed a style that just happened to happen right off the bat. She hits the ground and she's running. She's doing a lot of Pokemon and anime stuff, Pokemons and anime, and extremely clean. And so she's now on the floor working with all of my other artists and at an amazing level. You know, she's
And how long
doing
she been
incredible.
tattooing now?
Well, she did just a small amount of on the floor tattoos right before the pandemic hit, right? But she wasn't actually going that much yet. So pandemic hits, you know, then here in California, we were out of work for 11 months. So she didn't tattoo for 11 months. So you can't really count that except for when she started, right? Then she's back in, and right off the bat, she's back in there just as strong. So I'd say less than a year, you know.
Wow.
We've been back from the pandemic. Has it been a year? So maybe slightly over, but she's doing amazing work, and can't wait to see what she does with that or decides to do with that. And along with, I think I have a lot of great artists in the shop. I just don't think that they're out there. You know, there's so many artists now that are amazing, right? That some of them get lost in the mix of that, even though they're
Yeah,
super talented.
people bring certain artists' work to my attention all the time. You're like, well, have you seen this guy? I'm like, never heard of him. And I look at their work and I'm just blown away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all I can say is I'm glad I got into the business when I did, because I wouldn't stand a chance trying to get in now
Yeah.
with the youth that's coming in and the talent that just right out of the
Yeah.
gate, these people are killing it.
Yeah, she's one of those. It's like that, you know, and I was like, damn, I can't do that. You know, I look at it, and Yvonne and I'll joke, and sometimes, and we're like, okay, yeah, we taught her, but we can't do that. You know, I cannot do my lines as crisp as she does. That's probably from, you know, Yvonne teaching her that, but we taught her black and gray, we taught her color, we taught her all the basics, we made her take apart machines and put them together. We did old school traditional training of her, except for mixing inks. We used to all mix our inks, and we didn't teach her that, you know, because it's just, you can't even really find the powder anymore. So to make her go through that, but we did ever do the machine building and all of those things, you know, which is super fun.
I still have a couple of big cardboard boxes in the back of the warehouse of inks that I bought back in the 90s. Powders, excuse me. So I still have some secret stashes that I don't know what I'm going to do with. Maybe they'll just end up on display here at some point, or maybe
I was going to say they're going to be in the museum. They're going to have a little label underneath, you know, raw powdered tattoo ink from.
You know? Yeah, back in the day, you buy your hot colors from Hook and your cool colors from Flow, you know,
yeah,
powders and
right.
stuff. So yeah,
that's right.
It's great. I love these talks. Speaking with people who've been tattooing, you know, as long as I have or older, because it always brings back and inspires so many memories that just
absolutely,
you know, like neurons that haven't worked in decades all of a sudden start firing again, and it's just awesome. Now,
yeah, one of my artists the other day, Jose, he has a tendency to love to visit a lot of shops. So he'll pop in and go visit people all over, you know, and he goes up to see like Freddie Corbin, and Freddie's like telling him stories about me that Jose hasn't heard. And he comes back and he's like, Kari, you got to start telling us these stories. And I said, you got to start asking the questions. You know, you start the conversation and the stories start to flow, right? I can't just pop in there and say, hey, back in the day, you know what happened? Yeah. So it's kind of funny to hear that, but yeah, tell the stories.
Yeah. I used to spend a lot of my times at conventions in the 90s, not tattooing. I would literally just be booth hopping, and like Ink Slingers was a big one, you know, like back when Jack Armstrong was still tattooing and showing up there, like Catfish Carl and Rick Walters, and all these guys. I would absolutely abandon my booth, not make any money, and just be hawking over these people, trying to steal their secrets and learn their techniques, and just listen to every story I possibly could.
And good stories.
And it didn't work out, and I didn't do it intentionally. I was just curious, but in the long run, I'm happy I did it that way, because the money I would have made there, that would have been spent that weekend. But the memories and the friendships that I developed, conventions nowadays are just completely different. There's a small aspect of that, you know, the camaraderie, the networking, but these days it's all about, you know, trying to get in, do promotion, make money, and there's
it's
a place
totally
for
different.
It's a place for it, but it doesn't. To me, that's not the soul of a convention. The soul is the interaction and the meeting of other artists. That was a big part of it.
Yeah, the conventions, you know, from back in the day, going way back, you know, they were, as we remember, just once a year, way back. And I think the Queen Mary convention that I went to in '82 was the first spin-off change, you know, where there was always National Tattoo Association convention, right? And then all of a sudden there was this one, which started people thinking like, oh, I want to do a convention. And eventually, we started having tons of conventions. So there's so many now, it's become, like you said, a money-making thing. And you don't really know people the way you used to know people. Granted, there was a lot less people tattooing back then, and you got to know people a little bit better and spent a little more time talking, but how do we now share that, right? So I don't know. I don't know if you guys heard about this. I know you have. You've heard about the Tattoo Heritage Project that Charlie Cartwright has fathered. He's trying to open. His dream is to open a museum that will be a large-scale tattoo museum. A lot of us have little sections of museums. Like, I consider my shop in itself to be a little museum, and because we're the oldest shop and because we're the last remaining piece and the oldest piece in the nation, we feel we're a little museum, and we have museum stuff in there, and there's little pockets of those, all over the country, all over the world. But there isn't a natural history tattoo museum. So that's his dream. And so we're trying to do that. And I think that's going to be the future of how things are shared, because the forefathers are starting to disappear on us, and those storytellers are gone, right? A lot of them, and they can't tell their stories. So we have to carry it on some way. And I think that's probably the way it's going to have to be done. And the best way is to put it all in, and most of it in-house, one place, and then have traveling exhibits come through. Like, if you have a museum, you want to share some of your stuff in the museum for a few months or whatever, how long of time it would be, and a special exhibition,
Just like large scale art museums, people put things there, they put their collections on loan to a certain museum for a certain period of time. It could completely be done, but yeah, sharing the history, sharing the stories, that is something that's getting lost. When I was younger, I literally was going into people's booths, hanging out, and trying to steal their secrets. Not in a evil way, just wanting to learn. And tattooing was still a little secretive back then. And so I would gather all these little morsels from all these old timers and people I respected, and I just looked like a squirrel stuffing a nest. And until one time, I tell this story a lot, but Rick Walters gave me a death stare. And if you've ever had one of Rick Walters' death stares, it's pretty scary. But I think it was an Ink Slingers. I was hanging out with Catfish Carl and Rick in their booth, and I can't remember what they shared with me at the time, but I kind of looked at them all like, oh my God, thanks. I really appreciate it. I'm like, don't worry, guys, your secret's safe with me. And then Rick just gave me that stare. And he's like, you don't get it, do you? And I was like, what? Because now I'm scared for my life. Is Rick going to stab me? And he and basically he looked at me, he goes, you don't get it. He goes, we don't share this information and knowledge with you so that it could die with you. It, basically put it in my hands to, take the totem and share it. I just, and that was the moment when kind of like my tattoo destiny kind of changed as to, holy shit, these people are entrusting me to, they're passing the torch to some degree, and it's my job to carry it for a little while, but eventually pass it on to others and
share it to someone else, right?
So that's
I have the same kind of story with Rick, because that's how I ended up with the shop, like
really
Rick,
I want to hear
very
that.
similar, because he started, the Shaw brothers, after Bob passed, they had the shop there in the Pike, and Bob and Larry, and they wanted to sell the shop, so they were trying to sell it, and Rick's like in my ear, like, Kari, you should carry the torch, you should buy the shop, you should continue it, I think you'd be the one, and at first I was running 3 other shops at the time, and I was like, Rick, I don't want to run another shop. And then they couldn't find anybody buy it, nobody took it over, the neighborhood was going down, and so they started closing the doors down, and people started taking everything out, the shop became empty, right? And I was like, oh gosh, all that history. And Rick's like, Kari, and I'm like, okay, Rick, okay. So I got together with my business partner to at the time. So Bob's shop actually owned his space, so you had to buy the space to be able to have the shop. So I had to do that first. So we got that going, but it all came from Rick. Rick, you got to carry the torch. You got to carry the torch. And even Lyle Tuttle once kind of said something like that. He said, someday I might entrust my collection to your space so you can carry the torch for the history. The rest of, the people need to be able to see it, and that almost happened too. But rest in peace to both of them. Great men, but it was their words that said, hey, carry this on, tell people the story. So if my memory allows me, I'll try to keep telling the story as much as I can.
Well, Lyle was kind of like a second father to me to some degree. I was lucky enough to get to spend an awful lot of one-on-one time with him throughout the years. And I learned a lot from him for sure. But yeah, no, everybody thinks of, okay, Rick Walters has this persona, this is, he's a badass without a doubt, but he also had a very kind, generous and caring side, and he loves tattooing. There's no doubting that ever. So it's just awesome to hear any other stories, because what you hear about is his badass side. That's all I ever hear. And I'm like,
right.
Whereas I'm sure in his younger day, he was a man you definitely didn't want to cross, but that's not the Rick that I knew. I came along later, and I just enjoyed his company. Good man, both good men.
Yeah, he was a very good man, both of them very good men. And the badass side, you have to come down to the museum, see a little photos of some of that. We have a couple stories that Rick told himself. Some of them we didn't choose to put on the wall because we thought it would scare people too much. But we have a sample of a little bullet hole, that happened to be in the wall. Somebody didn't want to pay one day, and he told me stories of chasing people down the street, and all those great stories. But those are only to be told now and not to be seen anymore.
Agreed. Okay, so let's get back to Charlie. So you, Charlie, and Jack are kind of heading up this front for the Tattoo Heritage Project, or?
Well, let's say it started with Charlie, right? And then I don't know the chronological order of how people were chosen to be on the board, but at some point I got the phone call, and Charlie asked if I would be on the board, and Jack Rudy's on the board, and Chewy's on the board, and Corey Miller, JD Crow, and our secretary is Kimiko, who is the daughter of Lady Blue, who used to work in East LA. And so that group right now, hope I'm not missing anybody, but
we can blame it on age.
Yeah, I have to. I'm sorry, but I forget a lot. But we're trying to help this manifest. We're trying to do the fundraising and bring the money, because it takes a lot of money to open a museum. No matter whether you have great intentions or great ideas, you need that. So that's part of what we're trying to do, is to help that happen, for Charlie's dream to come true, which will then help everybody in the tattoo industry, I believe, to have this permanent spot. Charlie's idea was to put it in Long Beach, because basically the huge mecca of tattoo that happened in Long Beach, right there at the Pike, which is right where the shop is that I have now, that I'm lucky to hold and operate until somebody else takes it over, right? and carry that on. In this museum, they want it kind of to be in close proximity because there were so many shops there and so much sprung out of the pike. You know, the traditional tattooing leading to and developing the idea of black and gray tattooing. You know, that happened in the Pike area and then moved somewhere else. You know, East LA started to grow, and the style that Charlie and Jack and Freddie and Mike Brown, many others, you know, carried through. But they're the grandfathers of that style, the known grandfathers, you know, so the people who developed and made black and gray tattooing street front instead of behind them. Sorry, I lost my voice all of a sudden. You know, so, you know, to help tell that story, but not only the story, that particular story, but everybody's story. Because every area in the country has a story, right? You know, New York has a story, the Bowery has a story, everybody has a story. So, you know, people from California don't generally get out to hear those stories. So we want to be able to share all those stories in one place. So you can go, oh, I'm going to go to the museum because I want to go learn about tattoo, the history of tattoo.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree. There needs to be some sort of a central location, wherever to, whether it be West Coast, East Coast. I'm not one to make the call on that or anything, because like both have sort of core histories, but
yeah,
there's definitely a ton of history in the Long Beach area here, especially with the development of the black and gray style.
right.
Would that ever,
you know, and in the future, there could be, you know, one on each side of the country. You know, you never know, but
that's twice as much money too, though. So I mean, that therein lies the problem. I mean, it's not going to be a cheap venture to start with.
No, absolutely.
And then, I mean, if you want to do it, you're going to do it on a big scale where, you know, people, you're going to be asking people to send their precious collections out there. Well, it's going to be a business. It's got to be insured. It's got to be secure. It's got to be, that stuff doesn't come cheap at all. So people need to dig down into their pockets and be a little more generous here.
Yeah, even small amounts. You know, we started thinking, like, I don't know who did this research, but somebody, I think it was Kimiko, and she said, you know, if everybody donated $40 or more, we would have enough money to open the museum. You know, I mean, you waste $40 at one meal, right? You go out to dinner and that's gone, right? So it's not a lot, but it's a lot when it all comes together. And the thought that there could be big donators, you know, if there's people who really want to help this manifest, then somebody could say, you know, I'm going to donate this large chunk, you know, which then, because it's a nonprofit, becomes a tax write-off. So that's helpful for some people who need that, right?
Well, but everybody should keep that in mind, really. There's so many, I'm sure you guys have had all the discussions and have tabled many ideas on this, but you know, there's an idea of maybe generalized membership, an annual membership for tattooers. And then if you're a member and you happen to be in the area, admission's free for you, or just there's all different ways to do this. Then there's people get suspicious nowadays of anything.
Totally.
I don't like.
Understood.
I do a lot of charity. Not to toot my own horn, but I do a lot of charity. But I'm very, very cautious as to where I put my money nowadays, because quite often it goes into somebody's pocket rather than where it's intended. So maybe some sort of transparency with the bookkeeping, you know, on the website where it kind of says, you know, it doesn't need to be
this is where we're at.
Detailed, but like, you know, what's collected and where it goes. And, you know, obviously there have to be some salaries involved because people need to be doing work on a daily basis.
So right now there's no salary. Everybody's doing this voluntarily, you know, and nobody's taking any. Eventually they're going to have to hire a staff to run the museum.
Correct.
That won't be us, you know, we're just helping it get moving. They'll have to hire professionals to do each job. You know, they'll need a professional curator, and they'll need like you said, we are going to have an insurance company and all these type of things to handle, just like it has to be done at a museum. You're going to have a shipping company. You're going to have, the people who set the exhibit, right? There's going to be all of that, but we can't do any of that until there becomes enough to even draw the business plan, right? You got to lay out the business plan. You got to draw up exhibit ideas and things like that. So that's the beginning of that. And there's a lot of steps. So we're still in baby steps, the beginning of the baby steps, which will hopefully start to grow and roll, and become more and more so that it can happen. Charlie's been out, going to conventions and kind of on his own dime, just going out and trying to spread the word and bring forth, more awareness, I guess, of his idea. And so hopefully it'll start to spread, and hopefully this will happen, for him and for everybody, who wants to share. But I understand the doubt, because when I first heard about it, I had the same feelings. I absolutely did. And I had to sit down and talk to him and talk about the idea and, just open a conversation and say, tell me what you're thinking, because especially in tattoo business, their first fear is, are you opening a shop down the street from me? Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't have any doubt. I think it's an amazing idea, and I will help in any way that I can. I'm sure that I will donate. I'm sure that my mind is an open book to anybody. If you guys want to, pick my brain on ideas or run things across I will help in any way I can, without compensation, just because I love tattooing, and tattooing's given me everything that I have. So there is no price that's kind of too high to pay, is the way I look at it, but I mean, I just I bring that forth just because a lot of people are suspicious. So there has to be this transparency nowadays in almost anything you do, where you're requesting any sort of help from anybody. So
absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. So like I said, I will do what I can. I don't want to be in the board. I don't want to. I don't want that big of a commitment. But I'm here to help in any other way I can.
Consultant, right? That we talked about that, because there's so much knowledge out there historically, and even as far as this goes, sharing stories and things, and everybody has a little piece of it. So being able to call people and say, what do you think about this, or what do you know about that? That's extremely helpful. To be able
I have experiences in real estate and other things that are unrelated to tattooing, but are things that are, second interests of mine that I've been working on for decades that I can be helpful with, and I'm sure.
Oh, that's great.
I'm sure we can find somebody out there that, as a lawyer, that would be willing to donate time, or at least at a very reduced rate. I mean, we all have connections, and if we pull all those connections together, I don't see how this can not happen.
I agree. I think it can happen. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know, because who's going to give up their stuff? But you don't have to give up your stuff. Like even like you said, in an art museum, there's so-and-so's wing, it's there, but it's got your name on it, right? Or it comes through for, a period of 6 months, and then is crated up and shipped back. And then the next exhibition comes through, the next storytelling group of things. So, I know there's a lot of stuff on the East Coast, there's tons of it, that can be shared, and knowledge that can be shared. And I look forward to learning some of that, because I don't know a lot of that.
I mean, I can see it having a permanent exhibition, just a permanent contents, but then, some satellite rooms that the collections change on a regular basis, and that will keep curiosity a little higher. And it won't be like, well, we went there last year, we've already seen it, we're busy, so we're not going to go.
Right.
So let's go and see what's there this quarter or what.
Right.
I think that would be a key part to
Absolutely. To keep
keeping it going.
the interest. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
last week I was talking to Jay Brown from the Northwest Tattoo Museum. I got to
Mhm.
see a bit of what he has up there. You know, I'm sure he'd contribute. And then there's Danielle that does have charge of Lyle's collection. I'm sure they would send stuff down there. And Troy
Yeah.
Temple has massive collection of stuff. There's so many of us. I don't have a massive collection, but I have a small collection.
Right.
But
Right.
like there's so many people out there that would be not only happy but proud to have their stuff exhibited for a
Yeah.
short period of time, and just
I
keep
agree.
the
I agree.
history, keep the story going, keep the knowledge flowing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, we don't have a lot either at the shop, but we have enough. And we've lent that to different museums several times. Natural History Museum LA was one of them. They did the exhibition tattoo that was there for, I think it was up for about 6 months, and they sent someone over, a crating company. They safely crated everything, shipped it over. Everything was insured and covered, and displayed in the museum for the period of time, and then they crated it up, insured it, sent it back, and put it back up on our walls. It was great. It was painless, and it was very exciting to walk in there and see your collection in a museum. It was fantastic. It just made us all feel really proud.
It had to be a little terrifying though to see it sort of walking out the door. So, but
The hardest piece of all of them, because most of them we didn't worry about it at all, but we have a window, a hand painted window that we have displayed on our wall that was painted by Bob Shaw. You can see his fingerprints, on there. And that is so fragile because we had 3 of them. The other 2 just got demolished in trying to take them out, and this particular piece, we were like, what if it breaks? What if it breaks, right? So they were so careful. They reinforced the whole entire thing first, and they handled it with such care because they're used to these crating companies handling expensive artifacts.
Right, things that are to the rest of the world worth a whole lot more than we could imagine. But
exactly, right.
Well, it's awesome, and I really want to see that come to fruition for sure.
Yeah, thanks. I hope it does. For Charlie's sake. I know I think Lyle had the same dream. I just don't think he talked about it enough. And Charlie is talking about it.
Lyle talked about it for as long as I've known him, but
yeah,
the actions there was never any action. I mean, I remember being at Lyle's house years ago, and there was boxes that he had, all over the world all the time. He would buy stuff, send it home for his collection, and there would be crates and cartons that were shipped back to the US decades prior that had never been opened since. He was almost like he had a problem with collection. He just hoarded.
Yeah, he had so much stuff. I know he's, and that's still there. I'm sure they're going to do some sort of, I don't know what the plan is to do with that stuff, but that stuff needs to be displayed somewhere if it can be. And that could be a temporary exhibition that went through the museum, or a permanent wing, Lyle Tuttle wing, something like that. I don't know, but
absolutely. Well, I mean, I reach out to Daniel to see what ideas she has as to, I mean, she's the one in charge of it all and working on it all.
Yeah.
So I haven't talked to her in a few months or more, and I can reach out to her and see what her intentions are. Maybe she's working on something that can be combined, or who knows? I mean, I can't speak for anybody else for sure. Just we all sit there and bounce ideas around. Sooner or later, we'll all kind of agree on something that works, I guess.
Exactly, absolutely.
But
that's the deal. Everybody has great ideas, and those ideas are always welcome.
With Lyle, I think he always felt like he needed to do it sort of single-handedly, and I don't think he ever felt like he had enough, I don't want to say money, to do it right. But I mean, he was always looking for a space or planning it out,
it's difficult. It's extremely difficult. I mean, we're lucky we have some backing from the city and council members and things like that who are extremely interested. in this coming to Long Beach. So they're looking forward to Long Beach becoming more of a museum city. They're actually opening a jazz museum here in Long Beach, which is fantastic. You know, we have the MOLA Museum, Latin American art, and we have Polynesian art. We have the Long Beach Museum of Art. So we have a base of museums already. So they're really excited about the possibility of this museum coming into the city.
I wonder if they'd be willing, what they would be willing to do, if they'd be willing to donate a small parcel of land or something that they own that they don't want to own. You know, that
They
happens in every
are,
city and town.
yeah, they're searching. We have some help in looking. Like, it's all in raw stages, like I said, but that's on the table. You know, looking at, is there any space in the city that you guys are aware of that could be used? You know, so that's on the table, and we have a few real estate people who are working with the city and trying to find the right space too. I mean, it's a large area they need, and the place you put it is important, because you don't want it way out in the middle of nowhere where
Right.
people can't get to it.
No, it's got to be central or right along the fringe to be accessible to people. The fringe to me is more appealing because, like, I always look at tattooing as like sort of on the cusp of what's acceptable. You know, that's how I view it. It's not nowadays, it's totally
Yeah,
mainstream, but my
used to be that way. Yeah,
my idea is it's like, oh man, we're like
edgy,
fringe. Yeah, edgy. I like that.
Yeah, edgy.
So yeah, and to, you know, to any viewers out there that have any ideas or want to get involved, or, you know, just have connections, you want to donate land, you want to donate buildings, you want to donate uh, displays, whatever, you want to donate
Yeah,
money. There's
yeah.
ways to reach out. What's the best way for people to reach out, Kari?
You know, the best way is to start, everybody's online. So Tattoo Heritage Project, and
Okay.
it's on Instagram, and just message through there to start out, you know, and then we can go from there. Kimiko is running the Instagram and trying to keep an eye on that all the time. And that's probably the fastest way for people nowadays to contact.
This is true. Everything's instant. Like we're talking real
Yeah,
time here from opposite ends of the country. I
it's
we
great.
take it for granted, but man,
Yeah, yeah.
for people like us that never had that when we were younger, could you imagine where we could have gone, what we could have done? I mean, we've accomplished a lot, but
Yeah, I
could
know,
you
it's
even
huge.
imagine if we had this coming out of the gate? It
I
just
know, it would have been great. Learned so fast. You know, also they could reach out to anyone on the board they know. So, you know,
okay.
the names I mentioned, you know, if they know me personally and they want to contact me, that's easiest, you know, instead of trying to send it some other direction. So whatever is more comfortable for
Okay.
people.
I mean, we'll put links in the description below and everything too
Great.
for the different contacts. We'll get with you after and put all those in. But yeah, wow. It's been a great morning. I really enjoyed
Thank you.
talking to
Yeah, I
you, Kari.
agree. Yeah, me
And
too. Yeah, it's
I
good to
haven't
see you.
seen you in a very long time. I haven't even been out on the West Coast in a while. We moved out of Arizona in '07, and I really haven't been
Oh,
back
yeah,
much at all,
been
but
a while.
haven't been in California in a very long time.
You know, everybody's welcome to come and visit our little shop, our little
Mhm.
museum. It's small, but we enjoy the little tours, you know, and we've put up our little explanation plaque so people can do even a self-guided tour if everybody's too busy or they're in a rush, you know. So everything explains everything as they walk through it, and that's always very easy for people.
So people can do
But
their own little guided tours.
correct,
Awesome.
absolutely. Don't bother me. You know how you walk into the clothing store and you're like, no, I'm good. You know, let
Yeah.
me be. Just let me
Well,
walk through.
you never know how to read that. Like sometimes you walk into a tattoo shop and, you know, it's just like people are right in your face. Hey, what can we do? Da, da,
Yeah,
da, da, da. That's like, whoa, 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 give me some
yeah,
space. And
yeah.
then
Give me a
there's other
minute.
times
Yeah,
where you walk into a shop, people give you the space and you feel like you're being neglected. Like
exactly.
what's the happy medium there? You just never know.
Happy medium is to greet them and let me know if I can help you in any way.
That's
Let
how
them
we
have their
handled it.
space, but let them know that you're there. Right.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
And easily accessible
Happy
when
medium.
needed. So that's how we
Yeah.
always handle things. But I'm always
Yeah,
shocked
for
when we
sure.
go into some places as to the lack of customer service, not in the tattoo world so much, but like just anywhere. And
Sure.
nobody takes pride in what they
Absolutely.
do anymore. It's just shocking. But
It's true. It's true.
it was great to see you again, and
You too.
I
You
hope
too.
you have a fantastic day. I mean,
You too.
I
Thanks,
really,
guys.